Oma, Sochima whispered, his voice filled with confusion. She didn't respond. Instead, she looked up at him with tear-filled eyes, stood slowly, and pushed his phone into his chest. Take your phone, she said in a trembling voice. I know everything. Sochima's heart dropped as he realized what she meant. His secret was out. Oma, he began, but before he could finish, she pushed him away with a sob and stomped out of the bathroom. Once upon a time, in a beautiful village called Eano, there lived a hard-working and peaceful community. Eano was a lively place, filled with beautiful houses and fertile farmlands. The people of Eano were known for their hard work, love for education, and rich culture. When you walk through the village, you will see all kinds of buildings, schools where children learned, hospitals where doctors and nurses worked to care for the sick, and churches where people gathered to pray and sing. The people of Eano were not only smart, but they were also talented in different skills. Some were doctors, others were engineers, lawyers, or teachers. Everyone had something important to do, and that made the village special. Eano was a place where both rich and comfortable families lived. While some people had more money than others, no one was left behind because everyone tried their best to take care of each other. Among the many hardworking people in the village was a boy named Sochima. Sochima was an 18-year-old boy who just finished his secondary school education. He had big dreams for the future. He wanted to pass his JAMB exam and go to university, just like his cousin Uchenna. Every day, Sochima went to a lesson center where he prepared for the JAMB exam. His only goal for now was to study hard, pass the exam, and make his mother proud. Sochima's mother, Angolika, was a strong woman. She had been taking care of her son all by herself since her husband Chike died when Sochima was only 5 years old. It was not easy for Angolika, but she never gave up. She sold foodstuffs in the bustling market of Eano to provide for Sochima. Every morning, she would pack her goods and head to the market, hoping to sell enough to feed her family and pay for Sochima's school fees. Angolika often said to Sochima, "My son, I know things are hard, but if you work hard and do well in school, you will have a better life. You will not have to struggle the way I did." Sochima would always smile and reply, "Mama, I promise to make you proud. I will study hard and pass my exams. One day, I will become a great man." Angolika would pat him on the back and say, "I know you will, my son. You have always been a good boy." Sochima didn't have any brothers or sisters. It was just him and his mother in their small but cozy house. However, he was never lonely. His cousin Uchenna, who was the same age as him, was like a brother to him. Uchenna was the son of Sochima's father's sister, and they had been close since they were little boys. They did everything together, from playing football in the village square to reading their school books and preparing for their exams. One bright morning, as Sochima and Uchenna were walking to the lesson center, they talked about their dreams. "Sochi, do you think we will pass this JAMB exam?" Uchenna asked, sounding a bit worried. Sochima smiled and said, "Of course we will. We have been studying every day, and we have the best teachers at the lesson center. We just need to stay focused." Uchenna nodded, but still looked unsure. "I hope you are right, Sochi. I really want to go to the university. I don't want to disappoint my parents." "You won't disappoint them. Sochima assured him, "We are going to pass. We will go to the university together, graduate and get good jobs. Our families will be proud of us." Uchenna smiled, feeling a little better. "You are always so positive, Sochi. I don't know what I would do without you." "Well, that's what brothers are for, right?" Sochima laughed. "We have to support each other." As they reached the lesson center, they greeted their teacher, Mr. Obi, who was already waiting for them. Mr. Obi was a kind man who loved to teach. He always encouraged his students to do their best. "Good morning, Mr. Obi." Sochima and Uchenna greeted him in unison. "Good morning, boys." Mr. Obi replied with a warm smile. "Are you ready for today's lesson?" "Yes, sir," they both answered. "Good. We are going to practice some jam pass questions today, so I hope you have been reading." Sochima and Uchenna nodded, ready to tackle the day's lesson. They knew that passing the jam exam was the key to their future. Every time they felt tired or frustrated, they remembered their families and the dreams they had for a better life. During the break, Uchenna turned to Sochima and asked, "Sochi, what do you think university life will be like? Do you think it will be hard?" Sochima thought for a moment before replying. "I think it will be a lot of hard work, but it will also be fun. We will meet new people, learn new things, and experience life outside the village." Uchenna smiled. "I can't wait. I just hope we both get admitted to the same university." "We will," Sochima said confidently. "No matter what happens, we will always be there for each other." As the day came to an end, the boys packed their books and headed home. On their way home, they stopped by the market to see Angolika. The market was always full of people buying and selling, and Angolika was busy attending to her customers. When she saw the boys, she waved and called out to them. "Sochima, Uchenna, how was your lesson today?" she asked, and she handed a customer a bag of rice. "It was fine, Mama," Sochima replied. "We practiced some past questions." "That's good," Angelica said with a smile. "I'm proud of you both. Keep studying hard and you will pass your exams." "We will, Auntie," Uchenna added. "We are working hard." "I know you are," Angelica said. "Now go home and rest. You need to be ready for tomorrow." As the boys left the market and headed home, Sochima couldn't help but think about his mother. She had worked so hard for him, and he was determined to make her proud. He knew that passing his exams and going to university was the first step towards a better future for both of them. As the sun set over the village of Eano, Sochima and Uchenna sat outside their house, watching the stars and dreaming of the future. They knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but they were ready to face it together. "We are going to make it, Sochi," Uchenna said quietly. "Yes, we will," Sochima replied with a smile. "We'll make it." At the lesson center, where students gathered every day to prepare for their JAMB exam, there was a girl named Oma. Oma was different from most of the other students. She was 16 years old, very beautiful, and came from a very wealthy family. Her father was a successful businessman, and her mother was known for her charity work in the community. Despite her father's wealth, Oma was friendly, kind, and humble. Everyone at the lesson center liked her because she was always smiling and ready to help others. Uchenna and Sochima were no exception. Like the rest of the students, they admired Oma's cheerful personality. Whenever Uchenna saw her, his heart would beat a little faster. He didn't say anything to anyone, not even Sochima, but he had developed feelings for her. He would often steal glances at her during lessons and smile to himself when she waved at him. "Sochi," Uchenna would say sometimes when they were leaving the lesson center. Oma is really nice, don't you think? Sachima would nod, not thinking much of the question. Yes, she is, he would agree. Oma had a way of making everyone feel comfortable around her. Whenever she walked past them, she would smile and wave, and both boys would wave back. But one day, things changed. It was a quiet afternoon, and Sochima and Uchenna were walking home from their lesson center. The sky was clear, and a gentle breeze was blowing, making the day feel peaceful. Suddenly, Sochima turned to Uchenna, looking serious. Uche, there is something I need to tell you, Sochima said, his voice low as if he was worried about how Uchenna would react. What is it? Uchenna asked, a bit surprised by his cousin's tone. Sochima hesitated for a moment, then sighed deeply. I think, I think I'm in love with Oma. Uchenna felt his heart drop. He had liked Oma for a long time, but he had never said anything about it to anyone, not even to Sochima. Hearing his cousin say that he liked Oma made him feel sad. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. You like Oma? Uchenna asked, trying to hide the sadness in his voice. Yes, Sochima said, nodding. I have been thinking about her a lot lately, and I want to tell her how I feel, but I don't know how to do it. What if she doesn't like me back? Uchenna felt torn. He wanted to tell Sochima how he felt about Oma too, but he loved his cousin so much that he couldn't bring himself to compete with him over a girl. Sochima had been like a brother to him, and Uchenna didn't want anything to come between them. After a long pause, Uchenna finally spoke. You should talk to her, Sochi. You never know, maybe she likes you too. But what if she says no? Sochima asked, still looking unsure. Uchenna forced a smile and patted his cousin on the back. I will help you. Let's talk to her together. I will be there to support you. Sochima smiled, feeling grateful for his cousin's encouragement. Thanks, Uche. I don't know what I would do without you. The next day, after their lesson were over, Sochima and Uchenna decided it was time to talk to Oma. Both of them were nervous, but Uchenna was determined to help his cousin. They spotted Oma packing up her books and walking towards the gate of the lesson center. She looked as cheerful as always, smiling and chatting with some of her friends. Now is our chance, Uchenna whispered to Sochima. Sochima nodded, his heart racing. They walked over to Oma, and as they got closer, Uchenna spoke first. Hi, Oma. Uchenna greeted her with a big smile. Oma turned to face them, her eyes lighting up as she saw the two boys. Oh, hi, Uche. Hi, Sochi. How are you both doing? We are good, Uchenna replied. We are just wondering if we could talk to you for a minute. Of course, Oma said, looking curious. What is it? Uchenna glanced at Sochima, who was suddenly looking very shy. Actually, it's Sochima who wants to talk to you, Uchenna said, gently pushing Sochima forward. I will leave you two to chat. With that, Uchenna quickly walked away, leaving Sochima standing there with Oma. Sochima felt his palms sweating and his heart pounding, but he knew he couldn't back out now. Sochima, Oma asked, tilting her head, what do you want to talk about? Sochima took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. Oma, I like you, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I like you a lot, and I was wondering if you would be my girlfriend. There was a moment of silence as Oma processed what Sochima had just said. Sochima looked down at the ground, afraid to see her reaction, but then, to his surprise, Oma smiled gently. Sochima, you are a really nice guy, Oma began, and I like you too, but not in that way. I am not ready for a relationship right now. I want to focus on getting into the university first, but I would love for us to be friends, really good friends. Sochima looked up, relieved, but also a little disappointed. So, you don't want to be my girlfriend? He asked. Oma shook her head. Not right now, Sochi. But that doesn't mean we can't be close friends. Who knows what the future holds? Let's just focus on being good friends for now, okay? Sochima smiled, feeling a little better. Okay, I understand. Thank you for being honest with me. Oma grinned and gave him a friendly nudge. No problem. You are still one of my favorite persons, Sochi. From that day on, Sochima, Uchenna and Oma became even closer friends. They would often walk home together after lessons, chatting and laughing about everything. Sometimes, Oma would visit Sochima and Uchenna at home, and they would sit outside, talking about their dreams for the future. Anglika, Sochima's mother, quickly grew fond of Oma. Whenever Oma came over, she would help Anglika with the chores, sweeping the compound or helping to prepare food. Anglika would smile and say, Oma, you are such a kind girl. You are always welcome here. Thank you, Mama. Oma would reply with a big smile. I love helping out. Anglika liked having Oma around because she brought joy and laughter to their home. You are like a daughter to me, Anglika would often tell her, and Oma would blush with happiness. Sochima and Uchenna were happy too, even though Sochima hadn't gotten the answer he was hoping for. He was glad to have Oma as a close friend. They spent more time together, and Oma became like part of the family. As time went on, the three friends, Sochima, Uchenna, and Oma, became inseparable. They supported each other through their studies and shared their hopes and dreams for the future. And no matter what challenges came their way, they knew they would always have each other. Life in Eano was good, and Sochima felt lucky to have such wonderful people in his life. Time flew by quickly, and soon, the day they had all been waiting for arrived, their JAMB exam. Sochima, Uchenna, and Oma had been studying hard for months, and now it was time to put all their efforts to the test. The three friends walked into the exam hall with a mixture of excitement and nervousness, but they were prepared. After the exams were done, they waited anxiously for the results. It felt like forever, but one day, the results were finally released. The news was better than they could have hoped for. Sochima, Uchenna, and Oma had all passed with flying colors. There was so much excitement in the air. Sochi, we did it! Uchenna shouted, hugging his cousin tightly when they saw their results online. I knew we would, Sochima replied with a big grin. All the hard work paid off. Oma too was thrilled. I'm so happy for all of us. We are going to university, she exclaimed when they all met up to celebrate. They celebrated together, knowing that this was just the beginning of their journey. Soon, the time came for them to head up to their different universities. Sochima and Uchenna both got admission into state universities, while Oma's parents, being wealthy, sent her to a private university. Even though they were going to different schools, they promised each other that they would stay in touch and remain close friends. We won't let distance come between us. Sochima told Oma on the day she was leaving for school. We will visit you as often as we can. I will hold you to that, Sochi. Oma replied with a smile. And they kept their promise. During the school year, Sochima and Uchenna made sure to visit Oma whenever they could. The three of them stayed connected, and their friendship continued to grow stronger. Whenever they were together, it was as if no time had passed at all. Years passed, and soon they found themselves in their final year of university. Sochima had grown more confident over the years, and his feelings for Oma had only deepened. He had asked her out once before, back when they were preparing for their JAMB exams, but she had turned him down, saying she wasn't ready for a relationship. They had stayed good friends, and Sochima respected her decision. But now, in their final year, he felt like it was time to try again. One sunny afternoon, after their exams were over and they were relaxing under a tree on campus. Sochima turned to Oma. Oma, there is something I need to ask you, he said, his voice serious but gentle. Oma looked at him curiously. What is it, Sochi? Sochima took a deep breath. He had been rehearsing this moment in his head for weeks. I still like you, he said quietly. I have liked you for a long time, and I was wondering, would you consider being my girlfriend now? Oma looked at him, her eyes softening as a smile spread across her face. Oh, Sochi, she said, her voice full of warmth. I have always known how you felt, and I'm ready now. Yes, I would like to be your girlfriend. Sochima couldn't believe his ears. His heart swelled with happiness as he realized that this time Oma was saying yes. Really? Sochima asked, his face lighting up with joy. Yes, really. Oma laughed. I have always admired how patient and kind you have been, Sochi. I'm glad we can finally take this step. Sochima couldn't stop smiling. It felt like a dream come true. He reached out and held Oma's hand, and she squeezed it gently. I'm so happy, he said softly. Meanwhile, Uchenna watched from a distance. He had always known about Sochima's feeling for Oma, and though he had his own feelings for her, he had never said anything. Now that Sochima and Oma were finally together, Uchenna felt a pang of sadness. He had kept his feelings hidden for so long, and now it seemed too late. But despite his sadness, Uchenna loved his cousin too much to let jealousy come between them. Later that evening, as the three friends sat together talking about their plans for the future, Uchenna smiled and said, I'm happy for you too. You make a great couple. Thanks, Uche, Sochima replied, smiling at his cousin. You have always been there for me, and I'm grateful. Oma nodded. We are lucky to have such a good friend like you, Uche. Though Uchenna's heart ached a little, he smiled and nodded. We will always be close no matter what. He said, we are like family. After that day, Sochima and Oma's relationship blossomed. They were happy together, and Uchenna remained their close friend, never letting his hidden feelings get in the way of their friendship. Soon, graduation day arrived. It was a time of celebration, and all three friends were proud of what they had achieved. After years of hard work, they were finally done with university. But life had even bigger plans in store for Sochima. One day, not long after their graduation, Sochima received an unexpected letter. It was a letter from an international scholarship program offering him the opportunity to pursue his master's degree abroad. It was a dream come true, but it came with a heavy price. He would have to leave Oma behind. When Sochima told Oma the news, she was both happy and sad. I'm so proud of you, Sochi, Oma said, her eyes filled with emotion. This is an amazing opportunity. You have to go. But what about us? Sochima asked, worried. I don't want to leave you behind. Oma smiled and placed a hand on his cheek. I'll be right here, waiting for you. This is something you need to do, and I want you to succeed. But promise me you will come back when you are done. I promise, Sochima said, his heart aching at the thought of leaving her. I will come back, Oma. I will come back for you. With a heavy heart, Sochima prepared to leave for his studies abroad. It wasn't easy saying goodbye to Oma, but they promised to stay in touch. They called each other often and wrote long messages, making sure their bond remained strong even though they were far apart. While Sochima was away studying, Uchenna decided to stay in Nigeria and pursue his own master's degree. He enrolled in a program close to home, wanting to stay near his family. As for Oma, she went on to serve in the National Youth Service Corps (NYSC), a program for graduates to serve the country in different communities. She was posted to a new town where she worked as a teacher, helping young children with their studies. Though their lives were moving in different directions, the three friends always kept in touch. Whenever they had the chance, they would call or message each other, sharing stories about their experiences and cheering each other on. One evening, while Sochima was abroad, he received a message from Oma. It read, I miss you, Sochi. I can't wait for you to come back. Sochima smiled as he read her message, his heart warming at the thought of returning home to her. I miss you too, Oma, he replied. Soon, I will be back and we'll be together again. Though life had taken them on separate paths, their friendship and love remained strong, and they knew that no matter how far apart they were, they would always be connected. Time passed quickly, and before Sochima knew it, he had completed his master's degree abroad. It was a big accomplishment, and he felt proud of himself for everything he had achieved. Not long after, he was offered a job in the country where he had studied. The salary was great, and the opportunity was one that Sochima couldn't turn down. He knew that taking the job would set him up for a bright future. But despite his happiness, there was something that weighed heavily on Sochima's heart. He hadn't returned home to Nigeria to see Oma since he left. He had promised her he would come back after his master's degree, but now that he had a job, it meant staying abroad for a few more years. The thought of staying away from Oma for that long made him feel sad and guilty. One evening, as Sochima sat in his small apartment thinking about his life, he decided to call Oma and talk to her about his decision. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he needed to be honest with her. Hello, Sochi. Oma's cheerful voice came through the phone. Hey, Oma, Sochima replied, trying to sound upbeat even though his heart was heavy. How are you, my love? I'm doing well, Oma said. How about you? How is work? It's going great, Sochima replied. I have settled into my new job and everything is going smoothly. But there is something I need to talk to you about. What is it? Oma asked, her voice softening with concern. Sochima took a deep breath. Oma, I know I promised to come back home after my master's degree, but I've been offered a really good job here. It's an opportunity I can't pass up. I'm going to need to stay here for a few more years. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Sochima could imagine the disappointment on Oma's face. A few more years, she finally said, her voice tinged with sadness. Yes, Sochima replied, his heart sinking. 3 more years, to be exact. Oma sighed softly. I understand, Sochi. You have worked so hard to get where you are. I can't ask you to give that up. I'm so sorry, Oma, Sochima said. I really want to be there with you, but I have to do this. It's for our future. I know, Oma replied. I just miss you so much, but I will wait for you. I always will. Thank you for understanding, Oma, Sochima said, feeling a mixture of relief and guilt. I promise I will be back in 3 years and we'll be together. Despite the sadness in her heart, Oma smiled through the phone. Okay, Sochi, I'll be waiting. They continued to talk, chatting over the phone and sending messages back and forth. Their love remained strong, but the distance between them was hard for both of them to bear. One day, Sochima called his mother, Angelica, to check on her. It had been a while since they last spoke, and Sochima wanted to make sure she was doing well. Hello, Mama, Sochima said when she picked up the phone. Ah, Sochi, my son. Angelica's voice was full of joy. It's so good to hear from you. How are you? I'm doing fine, Mama, Sochima replied. How are things at home? We are all doing well, Angelica said. But Sochi, there is something I need to talk to you about. What is it, Mama? Sochima asked, curious. Angelica's tone became more serious. Sochi, you know that Oma is a beautiful girl, right? If you don't marry her soon, someone else might. She's been patient waiting for you, but other men will start to notice her. You don't want to lose her, do you? Sochima's heart raced. He hadn't thought about it that way, but his mother was right. Oma was special, and he didn't want to risk losing her. Mama, I love Oma, he said. I don't want to lose her. Then marry her, Sochi, Angelica urged. Even if you are still abroad, you can do the introduction and traditional marriage. Uchenna can represent you. Don't wait too long. Sochima thought about it for a moment, then nodded to himself. His mother was right. Okay, Mama, I'll talk to Oma and ask her to marry me. Later that evening, Sochima called Oma, feeling both nervous and excited. This was a big step, and he hoped she would say yes. Hey, Oma, Sochima began when she answered the phone. Hi, Sochi, Oma replied. What's up? There is something important I need to ask you, Sochima said, his voice serious. What is it? Oma asked, curious. Sochima took a deep breath. Oma, I love you. I have loved you for a long time, and I don't want to lose you. I know I'm still abroad, but I want to marry you. Will you marry me? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Sochima could hear his own heartbeat as he waited for Oma's response. Finally, Oma spoke. Sochi, are you serious? Yes, I'm serious, Oma replied. I want to marry you, and I promise I'll come back to take you with me when I'm done here. Uchenna can represent me at the introduction and traditional marriage. Please, Oma, say yes. Oma was quiet for a moment, her mind racing with thoughts. She loved Sochima, but the idea of getting married while he was still abroad made her feel nervous. After much contemplation, she finally spoke. Okay, Sochi, Oma said softly, I will marry you. I trust you. Sochima's heart leaped with joy. Thank you, Oma. I promise I won't let you down. With that, the preparation for the introduction and traditional marriage began. Since Sochima was still abroad, Uchenna stepped in to represent him during the ceremonies. On the day of the introduction, Uchenna dressed in his finest traditional attire and stood proudly as Sochima's representative. The families gathered and everything went smoothly. Oma's family accepted Sochima's proposal and the marriage was approved. Soon after, the traditional marriage took place. There was dancing, singing, and celebration. Even though Sochima couldn't be there in person, his presence was felt through Uchenna and the love that filled the air. After the traditional marriage, Oma moved in with Anglika. Anglika was overjoyed to have Oma living with her. She had always liked Oma and had treated her like a daughter. Now that Oma was officially part of the family, Anglika felt even closer to her. My daughter, you have made me so happy, Anglika said one day as they sat together on the porch. I always knew you would be a wonderful addition to our family. Thank you, Mama, Oma replied, smiling warmly. I'm happy to be here. Oma soon got a job at the local primary school, where she worked as a teacher. She loved children, and her new job brought her great joy. Every day, she went to school with a big smile on her face, ready to teach and inspire her students. The children adored her, and she made sure each one of them felt special. Good morning, Mrs. Oma, the students would call out whenever they saw her. Good morning, my darlings, Oma would reply with a smile. She treated every student with kindness and they loved her for that. Even though Sochima was far away, Oma kept herself busy and stayed positive. She and Sochima continued to chat and call each other often, and their love remained strong despite the distance. I miss you, Sochi, Oma would say during their calls. I miss you too, Oma, Sochima would reply, but soon we'll be together just a little while longer. And so, life in Eano continued, filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a future where Sochima and Oma would finally be together again. As the years passed, Uchenna's life also took a new turn. He got a job at a big firm in Lagos, one of the busiest cities in Nigeria. The job came with a lot of responsibilities, but Uchenna was grateful for the opportunity. He worked hard and did his best to make a name for himself, even though the job kept him busy. Uchenna always made time for his family. Whenever he had leave or holidays, he would return to his village to spend time with his parents and visit Anglika and Oma. Uchenna cared deeply for his family. Whenever he came home, he brought gifts and presents for everyone. He would give Anglika bags of rice, clothing, and other items she might need for the house. For Oma, he always bought something special, like a beautiful scarf or a nice pair of shoes. Ah, Uchenna, you spoil us too much, Anglika would say, laughing whenever he handed her a gift. It's nothing, Mama, Uchenna would reply with a smile. You deserve it. Oma, too, appreciated Uchenna's kindness. Thank you so much, Uche, she would say, smiling warmly at him. Uchenna and Sochima stayed in close contact. Even though they were living in different parts of the world, they would call each other, catching up on each other's lives. Their conversations were always filled with laughter and good memories. Uchenna would ask Sochima about his job abroad, and Sochima would ask Uchenna about life in Lagos. How is work going, Sochi? Uchenna would ask during one of their calls. It's going well, Uche, Sochima would reply. I'm working hard and things are looking up. How about you? Same here, Uchenna would say. I'm doing my best, but you know Lagos, always busy. Both brothers cared deeply for each other, and Uchenna made sure he took care of their family while Sochima was away. He always checked on Anglika and Oma, making sure they were happy and comfortable. It was his way of helping his cousin from afar. Meanwhile, Sochima continued working hard abroad. He made sure to send money home always to support his mother and his wife, Oma. He wanted to make sure they were taken care of, even though he was far away. But one day, something unexpected happened that changed Sochima's life forever. While working at the company abroad, Sochima met a white lady named Mandy. Mandy was the daughter of Sochima's boss, and she often came to the office to visit her father. At first, their interactions were brief, just casual conversations here and there. But as time passed, Mandy started showing more interest in Sochima. She admired his hard work and his kind personality, and soon enough they became friends. Sochima, you are really good at what you do, Mandy said one day as they chatted during a lunch break. I can see why my dad trusts you so much. Thank you, Mandy, Sochima replied politely. I just try to do my best. As their friendship grew, Sochima noticed that Mandy was becoming more attached to him. She would invite him out to dinners and events. And while Sochima was friendly, he kept his distance, knowing that he had Oma waiting for him back home. However, one day, Mandy did something that caught Sochima completely off guard. Sochima, Mandy said one evening after they had dinner together, I want to ask you something important. What is it? Sochima asked, feeling a bit uneasy. Mandy looked at him seriously and said, I like you, Sochima. I want you to be more than just a friend. I want us to be together. Sochima was shocked. He hadn't expected this at all. His heart raced as he thought about what to say. He wanted to refuse, but then a thought crossed his mind. What if refusing Mandy would cost him his job? She was the daughter of his boss, and saying no to her could create problems for him at work. Fear gripped him, and even though he didn't want to betray Oma, he felt trapped. After a moment of hesitation, Sochima finally said, Okay, Mandy, we can try. Mandy's face lit up with joy, but Sochima felt a sinking feeling in his chest. He knew this was a mistake, but he didn't know how to get out of it. As time went on, Mandy and Sochima's relationship grew, and one day, Mandy asked him to marry her. Sochima, we are perfect together, Mandy said excitedly. Let's get married. My father will be so happy, and we can build a life together. Sochima didn't know what to do. He felt like he had no choice but to agree. If he refused, he could lose his job, and his career would be over. Reluctantly, he said yes, and they got married in a small private ceremony. Sochima kept the marriage a secret from everyone back home. He didn't tell Oma, Uchenna, or even his mother Anglika. He couldn't bear to let them know what he had done. Deep down, he felt ashamed, but he didn't know how to fix the situation. After the marriage, things took a surprising turn. Mandy's father, impressed by Sochima's hard work, and now considering him part of the family, promoted him to the position of manager in the company. With his new role came a big salary, and Sochima started making a lot of money. He began sending even more money home to Nigeria, making sure his mother and Oma had everything they needed. Whenever Oma asked him how he was able to send so much money, Sochima would tell her that he was doing several side jobs to earn extra income. I'm just working really hard, Oma, Sochima would say during their calls. I have picked up some side jobs to make more money. That's great, my love, Oma would reply, though she started to feel like something wasn't right. But you sound different these days. Are you okay? I'm fine, Oma, Sochima would quickly say. I have just been busy with work. Oma tried to believe him, but the long distance calls at odd hours and the feeling that something was off left her worried. Meanwhile, back home in Nigeria, Uchenna continued to play a big role in Anglika and Oma's lives. He visited them often, bringing gifts and spending time with them. He loved seeing them happy, and he made it his mission to make sure they never felt lonely while Sochima was away. Soon, Uchenna was given a contract by Sochima to build a big house for his mother and wife. It was a beautiful house, much bigger and more luxurious than the one they had before. Wow, Sochi has really done well for himself, Uchenna said, admiring the house. What kind of work is he doing that he was able to afford all of this? Uchenna's curiosity grew. So one day, he called Sochima to ask him directly. During their conversation, Uchenna finally asked the question that had been on his mind. Sochi, what kind of job are you doing over there? Uchenna asked. You have been sending a lot of money home, and now you have built this big house. I know you are hardworking, but this seems like more than just side jobs. Sochima hesitated for a moment, then sighed. He knew he couldn't keep the truth from Uchenna any longer. Uche, there is something I need to tell you, Sochima said quietly. I haven't told anyone else, not even Mama or Oma. What is it? Uchenna asked, sensing the seriousness in his cousin's voice. I got married, Sochima admitted, to a white lady. Her name is Mandy, and she's the daughter of my boss. Uchenna was stunned. You got married? Does Oma know? No, Sochima said quickly, and I don't want her to know. You are the only one I'm telling this to. Mandy's family is very rich, and that's how I have been able to send so much money home. Please, Uche, don't tell anyone about this. I don't want to hurt Oma. Uchenna was silent for a moment, trying to process what he had just heard. He felt a deep sadness for Oma, who had been so loyal and patient, waiting for Sochima to come back. But he also understood the difficult position Sochima was in. I won't tell anyone, Sochi, Uchenna finally said, though his heart felt heavy. But you need to figure out what you are going to do. Oma deserves to know the truth. I know, Sochima replied quietly. I just don't know how to tell her. And so, Uchenna kept Sochima's secret. Though deep down, he felt bad for Oma, who remained unaware of the life Sochima was living abroad. As the years went by, Sochima still hadn't returned to Nigeria, despite the promises he had made to Oma. 5 long years had passed since he left for his master's degree abroad, and every year Oma waited patiently, holding on to the hope that he would come back. But as time passed, Oma began to worry more and more. She still talked to Sochima on the phone, but his calls became less frequent, and sometimes he would call at odd hours. Something didn't feel right. One afternoon, as Oma sat with Anglika in the kitchen, helping her prepare dinner, she finally decided to voice her fears. Mama, Oma began softly, her voice filled with concern. I have been feeling worried about Sochima. It's been so long and he still hasn't come back. What if something is wrong? Anglika looked at Oma with kind eyes. She had also been worried about Sochima's long absence, but she didn't want to add to Oma's fears. Don't worry, my daughter, Anglika said gently. Sochima will come back. He's just busy with work, but he loves you, and he will return when the time is right. Oma nodded, trying to find comfort in Anglika's words. But the feeling of unease didn't leave her. Deep down, she felt that something wasn't quite right. Later that evening, after Oma had gone to bed, Anglika decided to call Sochima. It had been a long time since they had spoken, and she wanted answers. Hello, Sochima, Anglika said when her son picked up the phone. Hello, Mama, Sochima replied, his voice sounding tired. How are you? I'm fine, my son, Anglika said, but then her tone became serious. But there is something we need to talk about. Sochi, why haven't you returned? It's been 5 years since you left, and Oma is worried. You promised her you would come back, but you have left her with me all this time. What's going on? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Sochima knew this conversation was coming, but he had been dreading it. He couldn't keep the truth hidden any longer, especially from his mother. Mama, Sochima began slowly, his voice heavy with guilt. There is something I need to tell you, and it's not going to be easy to hear. Anglika's heart raced. What is it, Sochi? Sochima took a deep breath. I I got married again, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, to a white woman. Her name is Mandy, and she's the daughter of my boss. We have 2 children together. Anglika was stunned. For a moment, she couldn't find any words. Her son, the boy she had raised with so much love and care, had married another woman while still being married to Oma. How could he do such a thing? Sochi, how could you? Anglika finally said, her voice filled with shock and sadness. How could you betray Oma like this? She has been nothing but loyal to you, waiting patiently for your return. And now, you tell me you have another wife and children abroad? I'm sorry, Mama, Sochima said, his voice breaking with regret. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. Mandy is daughter of my boss, and I didn't have a choice. If I had refused, I would have lost everything. So you choose money over the woman who loves you? Anglika asked, tears welling up in her eyes. How could you do this, Sochi? How could you break Oma's heart like this? I know I made a mistake, Sochima said, but please, Mama, don't tell Oma about this. I'm coming home soon, and I will figure out things. Just give me a little more time. Anglika felt a deep pain in her chest. She didn't know how to keep such a secret from Oma, but she also didn't want to destroy her son's life. All right, Sochi, Anglika finally said. I won't say anything for now, but you must come back soon. You owe Oma the truth. I will, Mama, Sochima promised. I'll be back in a few months. Anglika hung up the phone, feeling torn between her love for her son and her loyalty to Oma. She couldn't believe what had happened, but for now, she would keep the secret, hoping Sochima would make things right. Days turned into weeks, and Oma's worries only grew. She missed Sochima terribly and wondered why he hadn't come back yet. But one evening, her phone rang, and when she answered, she heard the voice she had been longing to hear. Sochi, Oma exclaimed, her voice full of excitement. Is that you? Yes, it's me, my love, Sochima replied, trying to sound cheerful. I have good news, Oma. I'll be returning to the village in a week. Oma's heart leaped with joy. Really? Oh, Sochi, I can't believe it. I have missed you so much. I can't wait to see you. I have missed you too, Oma, Sochima said, though his voice carried a hint of guilt. I'll be home soon. After the call, Oma couldn't contain her excitement. She told Anglika the good news, and both of them began preparing for Sochima's return. They cleaned the house, cooked his favorite meals, and made sure everything was perfect for his arrival. On the day Sochima landed in Nigeria, Uchenna was there to pick him up from the airport. The 2 cousins embraced warmly, and though Uchenna was happy to see Sochima, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the secret he had been keeping. How was your flight, Sochi? Uchenna asked as they drove back to the village. It was long, but I'm just glad to be back, Sochima replied. I have missed everyone. We have all missed you too, Uchenna said, glancing at his cousin. But you know, you can't keep the secret from Oma forever. I know, Sochima sighed. I just need a little more time. When they finally arrived at the village, Oma and Anglika were waiting for them outside the house. The moment Sochima stepped out of the car, Oma rushed towards him, throwing her arms around him in a tight embrace. Sochi, Oma cried, tears of joy streaming down her face. You are finally home. I'm home, my love, Sochima said, hugging her back tightly. I have missed you so much. Anglika too hugged her son, though her heart was heavy with the knowledge of his secret. Welcome home, my son, she said, forcing a smile. It's good to have you back. They all went inside, where a delicious dinner had been prepared. The table was filled with all of Sochima's favorite dishes: jollof rice, fried plantains, and spicy chicken stew. As they sat down to eat, everyone smiled and laughed, enjoying the moment. Oma was especially happy, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. She smiled warmly at Sochima, her eyes filled with love. I'm so happy you are back, Sochi, Oma said as she served him a plate of food. I have been waiting for this day for so long. I'm happy to be back too. Sochima replied, though guilt gnawed at him inside. After dinner, Sochima and Oma sat together in their room, talking and laughing like old times. Oma couldn't stop smiling and she told Sochima all about what had been happening in the village while he was away. Sochi, you won't believe how much the children at school love me, Oma said, laughing. They call me Auntie Oma and bring me little gifts every day. That's wonderful, Oma, Sochima said, trying to focus on the conversation, but feeling the weight of his secret growing heavier with each passing moment. As the night went on, Oma leaned her head on Sochima's shoulder and whispered, I have missed you more than you can imagine, Sochi. It feels so good to have you back. I have missed you too, my love, Sochima said softly, though his heart ached with the knowledge of the truth he was hiding. And so, they sat together, laughing and talking, unaware of the difficult conversations that lay ahead. For now, Oma was happy, and Sochima tried to hold on to the moment, knowing that soon everything would change. The next morning, the sun gently filtered through the curtains of Sochima and Oma's bedroom. Oma stayed awake, stretching, as she expected to find Sochima lying beside her. But to her surprise, the bed was empty. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, wondering where he had gone so early. After a few moments, she got up, dressed, and made her way downstairs. As Oma entered the living room, she spotted Sochima standing near the window, his phone pressed to his ear. He seemed deep in conversation, but the moment he noticed her, he quickly ended the call, slipping his phone into his pocket. Good morning, my queen, Sochima said, flashing her a wide smile. Did you sleep well? Oma felt a small twinge of suspicion. Something about the way he quickly hung up the phone didn't sit right with her, but she brushed it off, telling herself that she was just being overly sensitive. After all, Sochima had just returned after so many years, and she didn't want to spoil their time together with unnecessary worries. Yes, I slept well, Oma replied, forcing a smile as she walked over to him. She wrapped her arms around him in a warm hug. It was so good to have you back. Sochima hugged her back tightly, though his mind was elsewhere. He had been on the phone with Mandy, checking in on their children and making sure everything was fine back in the country he had left behind. He knew he couldn't keep juggling both lives forever, and the weight of his secret felt heavier with each passing moment. Trying to shake off his guilt, Sochima suggested, how about we spend the morning together? We can cook breakfast, do some chores, and just relax before you head to school. Oma nodded, grateful for the suggestion. That sounds perfect. They spent the next few hours in the kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast of fried eggs, yam, and tea. They laughed and joked as they cooked together, with Sochima sneaking bites of the food, while Oma pretended to scold him. Sochi, stop eating the food before it's ready. Oma laughed as Sochima stole another piece of fried yam from the plate. I can't help it, Sochima grinned. Your cooking is too good to resist. They sat together at the table to enjoy their meal, and for a moment, everything felt normal. Omar smiled as they chatted, happy to have Sochima by her side once again. But deep down, a part of her still felt uneasy. There was something about Sochima's behavior that seemed different, but she didn't want to dwell on it. She pushed her worries aside, focusing on the joy of being together again. After breakfast, Oma got ready for school. She was a teacher at the local primary school and she loved her job. As she gathered her things, she kissed Sochima on the cheek and waved goodbye. I will see you later, Sochi, Oma said, smiling warmly. Don't get into too much trouble while I'm gone. I won't, my love, Sochima replied with a chuckle. Have a great day, my queen. Once Oma had left, Anglika, who had been quietly observing everything, decided it was time for a serious conversation. She called Sochima and Uchenna into the living room for a family meeting. The weight of the situation had been hanging over her ever since she learned about Sochima's secret, and she needed to know what her son planned to do. Sochi, Anglika began, her voice calm but firm. Now that you are back, we need to talk. What exactly are your plans? Sochima sighed, running a hand through his hair. He had known this conversation was coming, but he still wasn't sure what to say. Mama, I I don't really know what to do, he admitted, his voice heavy with uncertainty. I'm stuck between two lives. I have a family with Mandy, two children that I care about deeply. I can't just leave them behind. Anglika frowned, her heart aching for both her son and Oma. So what about Oma? She asked, her voice filled with sadness. She has been waiting for you all these years, Sochi. She has loved you faithfully and patiently. Don't you think she deserves to know the truth? Uchenna, who had been sitting quietly, finally spoke up. Sochi, you are being selfish, he said, his voice filled with a mixture of frustration and concern. You can't have it both ways. You can't keep Oma in the dark like this. She deserves better. Sochima felt the weight of his cousin's words. He knew Uchenna was right. Keeping Oma in the dark was unfair, but he didn't know how to fix the situation without hurting everyone involved. I know, Sochima said, rubbing his temples. I just don't know how to tell her. Mandy has her own life back in the other country, and I can't just abandon my kids. But I can't keep lying to Oma either. I'm trapped. Anglika shook her head, her disappointment evident. You need to make a decision, Sochi, she said softly. You can't keep stringing Oma along while living another life abroad. It's not fair to her, and it's not fair to you. Sochima sat in silence for a moment, staring down at his hands. He knew his mother was right. He had been selfish, trying to maintain both relationships without facing the consequences. But now, the time had come to confront the truth. I will tell her, Sochima finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I will tell Oma the truth. I can't keep lying to her anymore. Uchenna looked at his cousin, his expression serious. You should better do it soon, Sochi. Oma has been true enough. She doesn't deserve to be hurt anymore than she already has. Sochima nodded. Though his heart felt heavy, he didn't want to break Oma's heart, but he knew that continuing to lie to her would only make things worse in the long run. He had to find a way to explain everything, even if it meant losing her. Anglika watched her son with a sad expression. She had always wanted the best for Sochima, but she couldn't help but feel that he had made some terrible choices along the way. Now, it was up to him to fix the situation and face the consequences of his actions. Whatever you do, Sochi, Anglika said quietly, just remember that honesty is the best part. Even if it's painful, Oma deserves to know the truth, and you need to be the one to tell her. With that, the meeting came to an end. Sochima sat in the living room deep in thought, the burden of his secrets weighing heavily on him. But he knew that it was time to face the truth. He didn't want to hurt Oma, but he couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. As the hours passed, Sochima made up his mind. He would tell Oma the truth. He didn't know how she would react, but he couldn't keep lying to her. It was time to put an end to the deceit and face the consequences of his choices. That evening, when Norma returned from school, she was cheerful as usual, unaware of the storm that was brewing. She hugged Sochima, happy to see him, and they sat together in the living room, talking about her day at school. Sochi, the kids were so funny today, Oma said with a laugh. One of them brought me a flower they picked from the school garden. It was so sweet. Sochima smiled weakly, but his mind was elsewhere. He knew that the time was coming when he would have to tell her the truth. He just didn't know how to begin. As the night wore on, Oma chatted happily, while Sochima's heart grew heavier with every word. He knew that soon their conversation would no longer be filled with laughter and joy. The truth would change everything, and there was no turning back. For now, he held on to the fleeting moment of happiness, knowing that soon everything would be different. That night, everything seemed calm as Oma and Sochima lay side by side. But Oma couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had been creeping over her for days. She had tried to push it aside to trust Sochima, but something didn't feel right. Still, she closed her eyes and tried to rest. After a while, she stirred and quietly got up from the bed, needing to use the bathroom. As she walked past Sochima's side of the bed, his phone, which was resting on the bedside table, lit up with a message notification. Out of habit, she glanced at the screen, not expecting anything unusual, but then she froze when she saw the name on the message, Mandy. Her heart began to race. The message preview showed a cheerful, playful line. Miss you. Can't wait for you to come back. Have you told your mom about us yet? Oma's hand trembled. Who was Mandy? Why was she messaging Sochima like this? Slowly, she reached for the phone and took it with her to the bathroom, quietly shutting the door behind her. Her hand shook as she unlocked the phone, something she rarely ever did. But this time, her instincts told her to look. She opened the message thread, and what she saw made her heart drop. There was countless messages from Mandy, talking about their children, asking about his trip, and wondering if he had told his family about them yet. It was as if a weight had suddenly been placed on her chest, and she struggled to breathe. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she needed to be sure. She couldn't believe what she was reading. With trembling fingers, she dialed the number attached to the messages. The phone rang twice before a cheerful voice answered. Hello, love. Why haven't you been replying? Did you tell your mom about us and the kids yet? The voice on the other end was filled with affection, and every word felt like a dagger in Oma's heart. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She couldn't speak. Instead, tears rolled down her cheeks. She quickly hung up the phone and sat on the cold bathroom floor, sobbing uncontrollably. She couldn't believe what she had just discovered. Sochima had been lying to her all this time, living a double life abroad with another woman, and not just any woman, a woman he had children with. The pain was too much to bear, and she felt her whole world crashing down around her. Sochima, who had been asleep, stared when he heard the faint sound of crying. At first, he thought he was dreaming, but as the sobs grew louder, he sat up, alarmed. Oma, he called out, looking around the dark room. When she didn't respond, he quickly got up and followed the sound to the bathroom. He knocked on the door, worried. Oma, are you okay? What's wrong? There was no answer, only the sound of muffled sobs. Panicking, Sochima gently opened the door, expecting to find her hot. But when he stepped inside, he froze. Oma was sitting on the bathroom floor, clutching his phone in her hands, her eyes swollen with tears. Her face was filled with a mixture of heartbreak and anger. Oma, Sochima whispered, his voice filled with confusion. She didn't respond. Instead, she looked up at him with tear-filled eyes, stood slowly, and pushed his phone into his chest. Take your phone, she said in a trembling voice. I know everything. Sochima's heart dropped as he realized what she meant. His secret was out. Oma, he began, but before he could finish, she pushed him away with a sob and stomped out of the bathroom. Sochima ran after her, but Oma had already reached the living room where she collapsed onto the couch, her chest heavy with sobs. He rushed to her side, pleading with her to let him explain. Oma, please, just hear me out. Sochima begged, his voice desperate. But Oma wasn't listening. The pain in her heart was too much to bear. She felt betrayed by the man she had loved and waited for all these years. She had trusted him, believed in him, and now everything was shattered. Don't you dare come near me, Sochima. She spat, tears streaming down her face. How could you do this to me? After all these years, after everything we have been through, you lied to me, Sochima. You lied. At that moment, the commotion had woken Anglika, who came rushing into the living room, her face filled with worry. What's going on? What's all this noise? She asked, her eyes darting between Sochima and the sobbing Oma. Oma looked up at Anglika, her voice trembling with betrayal. Did you know, Mama? She asked, her voice thick with pain. Did you know that Sochima has another wife? That he has children with her? Anglika's face paled. She had hoped this day wouldn't come like this. Oma, please, let me explain, she said softly, walking towards her. So you knew, Oma repeated, her voice rising with anger. You knew all this time, and you didn't tell me. You let me live in this lie? Anglika's eyes filled with tears as she knelt beside Oma. I only found out a few months ago, Oma, she said, her voice cracking. Sochima made me promise not to tell you. He said he would tell you himself. But this only made Oma more furious. So you both lied to me, she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. You kept me in the dark, both of you. Just then, Uchenna walked in, having heard the shouting from outside. He quickly rushed to Oma's side, his face filled with concern. Oma, what happened? He asked. Oma turned to look at him, her eyes filled with fresh tears. Did you know too, Uche? He asked, her voice almost a whisper. Did you know Sochima was married to another woman? Uchenna hesitated, guilt washing over his face. He couldn't lie to her, not now. He nodded slowly. Oma's face crumpled as she let out a cry of anguish. She hit Uchenna on the chest, her fists pounding weakly against him. How could you? How could you all lie to me like this? Uchenna stood still, taking her hits, knowing he deserved them. I'm so sorry, Oma, he whispered. I never wanted to hurt you. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Oma pulled away from him, tears streaming down her face, and ran back towards her room, slamming the door behind her. Oma, please, open the door, Sochima called out, hanging on the door, his heart filled with regret. I'm sorry, Oma, just let me explain. But Oma refused to open. From behind the locked door, her sobs echoed through the house. Anglika, who had been silently crying, looked at Sochima, her face filled with pain. Look at what you have done, Sochima, she said softly. You have hurt her. You have hurt all of us. Uchenna too stood in the living room, his head hanging low. He felt terrible for keeping Sochima's secret, and now it had all come crashing down. Oma's sobs continued from behind the closed door, each one a reminder of the pain and betrayal she had felt. Sochima, Anglika, and Uchenna stood helpless, knowing that the truth had torn their family apart. After hours of crying and pleading, Oma finally opened the door and came out of her room. Her eyes were swollen and her face was streaked with tears, but she had made up her mind. The pain in her heart was still raw, but she knew she needed to face the situation head on. Sochima sat in the living room, looking tired and filled with regret. Uchenna and Anglika were there as well, their faces reflecting the sadness and guilt they all felt for betraying her trust. Oma sat down on the edge of the couch, wiping her face and taking a deep breath. Sochima spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper. Oma, I am so sorry for everything, he began. I never wanted to hurt you. I have been such a coward, trying to live two lives and pretending everything was fine. But I can't keep lying anymore. I have made a lot of mistakes, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. Oma listened, her eyes focused on the floor. She didn't interrupt, though her heart was heavy with the weight of his words. Sochima continued, his voice filled with guilt. I can't continue with our marriage, Oma, he said, his voice trembling. I have children with Mandy, and I don't want to lose them. I am sorry for wasting your time, for making you wait all these years. You deserve better than this. I know you do. Oma finally looked up at him, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. Sochima, she whispered, her voice shaky. You have hurt me more than I can ever put into words. I loved you. I waited for you. And now you are telling me that you have chosen another family over the one we were supposed to build together. Sochima winced at her words, feeling the full weight of his betrayal. I'm so sorry, he repeated, his voice breaking. I never meant for this to end this way. Oma wiped her tears, her voice growing stronger. It's fine, Sochi, she said, surprising everyone in the room. I can't continue this marriage either. I deserve better than being someone's second choice. I won't stand in your way. You have made your decision and I'm making mine. Sochima looked at her, his heart aching at her calm acceptance. He had hoped for anger, shouting, anything but this quiet pain that cut deeper than he could have imagined. Oma, I'm sorry, he said again, his words feeling inadequate. Oma nodded, her face expressionless. I know you are, but it's over now. The next morning, Oma packed her things and left Sochima's house. She returned to her family's house, where her parents welcomed her with open arms. They didn't ask too many questions, knowing that she needed time to heal. They just held her close, letting her know that she was loved. A few days later, Sochima's family returned her bride price, officially ending their marriage. Sochima, burdened with guilt, traveled back abroad, where his life with Mandy and his children awaited. He tried to move forward, but the weight of his choices never left him. Uchenna, who had watched the entire situation unfold, felt as guilty. He had kept Sochima's secret for too long, and now Oma was paying the price. Months passed, and during that time, Uchenna and Anglika tried to visit Oma several times, but each time she refused to see them. It was too painful for her. She felt betrayed by the people she had trusted the most. Oma, please, let me explain, Uchenna would say from outside her door whenever he visited, but Oma wouldn't open the door. Even Anglika, who had always been like a mother to her, was met with silence. Oma couldn't face them. She was too hurt, too broken to pretend everything was fine. They all knew, she would think to herself, her heart aching with the realization that everyone around her had kept Sochima's secret. Eventually, Oma decided it was time to move on with her life. She needed a fresh start, away from the memories of her broken marriage and the pain of betrayal. So, she packed her bags and traveled to Lagos, where she had been offered a position at a large company. It was a good opportunity, and she was eager to begin a new chapter in her life. Life in Lagos was busy, and soon Oma found herself settling into her new job. She worked hard and tried to focus on her career, determined to leave the past behind. It wasn't easy, but each day felt like a step towards healing. One day, as she was walking through a busy part of the city, she heard a familiar voice called her name. Oma! She turned around and was surprised to see Uchenna standing there, looking just as shocked as she was. They hadn't seen each other since the day she left the village. Oma, it's so good to see you, Uchenna said, smiling brightly. How are you? How is Lagos treating you? Oma hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to feel. She hadn't spoken to Uchenna in months, and part of her still felt the sting of his betrayal. But there was also a part of her that missed their friendship. I'm doing well, she replied simply, her expression neutral. Lagos has been good to me. Uchenna nodded, sensing her hesitation. I'm glad to hear that. You look well, he said gently. After a moment, he added, Oma, can we sit and talk? I know I owe you an apology. I've wanted to reach out for so long, but I didn't know how. Oma considered his request. A part of her wanted to walk away, to avoid reopening old wounds, but another part of her was curious about what Uchenna had to say and how he had been dealing with everything. Okay, she finally said. We can talk. They went to a nearby restaurant, a quiet and beautiful place where they could talk without interruption. They ordered dinner, and as they ate, Uchenna took a deep breath and began to speak. Oma, I'm so sorry for everything that happened, Uchenna said, his voice filled with sincerity. I should have told you the truth about Sochima a long time ago. I thought I was protecting him, but all I did was make things worse. I know I hurt you, and I hate myself for that. Oma listened quietly, her expression calm but distant. She wasn't sure what to say, so she let Uchenna continue. I wanted to tell you something else, Uchenna said, his tone growing more serious. Sochi has been having problems with Mandy. It turns out he lied to her too about being single where they first met. Now she's upset with him and they have been separated for a few months. Oma looked at him, her heart not feeling the usual pang of emotion she would have expected at such news. She was beyond the point of caring about Sochima's life with Mandy. I don't know what Sochima is going to do, Uchenna continued, but he's been trying to fix things with her. Oma remained silent for a moment before speaking, her voice calm but firm. Well, I wish them good luck, she said, her words simple but full of finality. She no longer had any interest in Sochima's life. Her heart had moved on. Uchenna nodded, sensing that Oma was truly ready to close that chapter of her life. Thank you for agreeing to come out with me tonight, he said softly. It means a lot to me. After dinner, they continued to meet occasionally, and over time, Oma began to feel more comfortable around Uchenna. They laughed together, shared stories about work, and slowly rebuilt their friendship. For Uchenna, these moments with Oma were precious. He hoped that maybe he could have a second chance with her. Though Oma wasn't sure what the future held, she felt a sense of peace beginning to settle in her heart. She was ready to move forward, no longer weighed down by the pain of the past. For the first time in a long while, she felt free. One bright and sunny afternoon, Oma decided to visit Uchenna. She had been meaning to drop by for some time, and now that their friendship had begun to heal, she felt comfortable seeing him again. As she arrived at Uchenna's house, she was surprised to find Anglika there as well. The moment their eyes met, Oma's heart swelled with emotion. Without hesitation, Oma rushed towards Anglika and they embraced tightly. It was as though all the hurt and distance between them melted away in that single moment. Mama, Oma began, her voice soft with guilt. I have been meaning to apologize for shutting you out all this month. I was just so hot and I couldn't face you. I'm sorry. But Anglika shook her head and placed a gentle hand on Oma's shoulder. No, my daughter, don't apologize. If anyone should be apologizing, it's me. I knew about Sochima's other family and I should have told you. I didn't want to hurt you, but I only made things worse by keeping it from you. Please, forgive me. Oma wiped away a tear and smiled. There is nothing to forgive, Mama. I understand now, and I'm just glad we are here together. Angelika smiled back, tears of relief in her eyes. They spent the afternoon catching up, laughing and sharing stories. Oma told Angelika all about her new job in Lagos and how her life had changed since moving to the city. You sound so happy, Angelika said with a proud smile. I'm so glad things are going well for you, my daughter. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Thank you, Mama, Oma replied, feeling a warmth in her heart. It felt good to reconnect with someone who had always cared for her deeply. After that day, Anglika and Oma began to spend more time together. Anglika would visit Lagos and they would sit and talk for hours, catching up on lost time. Their bond, which had once been strained, grew stronger than ever. Meanwhile, Uchenna had been wrestling with his own feelings. For a long time, he had kept his love from Oma hidden, never daring to speak about it, especially after Sochima had shown interest in her. But now that Sochima was out of the picture, Uchenna couldn't ignore the feelings he had buried for so many years. He knew he needed to tell Oma how he truly felt. One evening, Uchenna confided in Anglika, his voice filled with nervousness. Mama, there is something I need to tell you, he began. What is it, Uche? Anglika asked, sensing the seriousness in his tone. I have been in love with Oma for a long time, Uchenna admitted, his heart pounding. Even before Sochi showed interest in her, I had feelings for her, but I never said anything because I didn't want to come between them. Now, I don't know what to do. I don't want to lose her. but I'm afraid it's too late. Anglika smiled gently, her heart filled with understanding. Uche, sometimes love takes time to reveal itself. If you truly love her, you should tell her how you feel. Don't be afraid to open up. You have been such a good friend to her, and she deserves to know the truth. Encouraged by his auntie's words, Uchenna decided to take a chance. A few days later, he invited Oma over to his house for a quiet evening. They sat in the living room playing a board game they both enjoyed and laughing as they teased each other about who was winning. As the evening wore on, Uchenna's heart began to race. He knew it was now or never. He took a deep breath and turned to Oma, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Oma, he began, his eyes meeting hers. There is something I've been meaning to tell you for a long time. I have had feelings for you for years, ever since we were in the Jam Lesson Center, but I never said anything because Sochi showed interest first, and I didn't want to come between you two. Oma looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, she didn't know what to say, but then a sad smile crossed her face. Uche, she said softly, why didn't you tell me back then? I had feelings for you too, before Sochi asked me out. I thought you didn't like me. I felt something for you, but when you didn't say anything, I assumed you weren't interested. Uchenna's heart leaped at her words. You did? He asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Oma nodded. Yes, I did. If you had made a move back then, things might have been different. But I guess life has its own way of working things out. Uchenna felt a wave of relief wash over him. He reached out and gently took her hand. I'm so sorry. I didn't tell you sooner, Oma. I was afraid of ruining everything, but I don't want to hold back anymore. I love you and I have always loved you. Oma smiled through her tears. I love you too, Uche, she whispered. I always have. They embraced tightly, feeling as though a weight had been lifted from their hearts. For the first time in years, they both felt free, free to love each other without fear, without hesitation. We'll take things easy, Uchenna said softly. There is no rush. Let's just enjoy being together. Oma nodded, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. That sounds perfect. When Anglika found out about their new relationship, she couldn't have been happier. She embraced them both, giving her blessings with tears of joy in her heart. I have always wanted the best for both of you, she said, her voice filled with pride. May your love grow stronger every day. And so, Uchenna and Oma took their time, allowing their relationship to blossom. They enjoyed each other's company, going on walks, sharing meals, and building a future together. It wasn't long before they decided to take the next step. A few months later, Uchenna proposed to Oma, and with Anglika's full support, they got married in a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by family and friends. It was a day filled with love, joy, and the promise of a bright future ahead. As for Sochima, things didn't go smoothly as he wished. Though he tried to make amends with Mandy, she remained stubborn and distant. The truth about him lying to her about his first marriage had damaged their relationship deeply, and she struggled to trust him again. Sochima continued to fight for his family, but it was clear that his actions had lasting consequences. Meanwhile, Oma and Uchenna lived happily together, building the life they had both dreamed of. They had found love where they least expected it, and through all the challenges, they had come out stronger than ever. Together, they proved that love, no matter how long it takes, will always find its way. This story teaches us that honesty is very important. Sochima made a big mistake by not telling the truth to Oma. He kept secrets and hurt many people, including himself. It shows that if you hide the truth, it can cause a lot of pain. But Uchenna shows us that even if we make mistakes, it's never too late to do the right thing. In the end, Oma found happiness with Uchenna because they were honest with each other. The lesson here is always to be truthful, even when it's hard, and to never give up on finding true happiness. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Oma, Uchenna, and Sochima on African Stories. If you liked it and felt inspired with their journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.